Hello everyone, welcome back to a Destiny 2 video. Today, we're going to talk about some of the new modifiers that were introduced, and no, it's not counterfeit because even though there's been a lot of controversy and mixed feelings about that modifier, we're actually going to talk about Arc Hunger. Now, I think there's a cool concept with this modifier, but really just what it ends up doing is it becomes another way to restrict your loadout. So as you can see when we're, hopping into a GM, we see all these green modifiers for the stealth build crafting, and this is usually what people will build into. So, you could run an arc sniper rifle to build into that, but something you kind of lose is that you're not playing into the surges at all because, again, Arc Hunger, it doesn't force you. There are other things you can use to negate this or work your way around it. Like, say you use a heal clip solar weapon to get your health regeneration, because this will also stunt your health regeneration. Let's just read the whole modifier. We're going to skip the whole Savathun part. So when it hungers, basically when you're not feeding it, you have to deal damage of the focus type, which is arc. When the worm is full, which means you've filled the bar with arc damage, your ability regen is increased. If the worm starves, aka you're not doing enough arc damage, you're going to lose ability regeneration and you're going to take increased damage from arc. There's tons of arc damage in this strike, but I'm not really like, I like the idea of it. It's just execution isn't great here because you're already being told what to run because of barrier and unstop, right? Now, if I were to, do this GM, I would have to make sure I have unstop and overload. As you can see, I have a breach loading grenade launcher, so I have that covered. All I would need is a primary pulse rifle, and I'm covered. And if I don't have that, I can get radiant with my melee and so on and so forth to proc barrier. But in a Grandmaster, that's a little unreliable. It's not as consistent. So usually you want to have a barrier weapon as well. I could use this shotgun, for example, because shotgun is in the artifact as a barrier weapon. But in a GM, using a shotgun is a playstyle that isn't really recommended unless you have a really powerful build. I would say, you probably could pull it off in this GM, but for the most part, this GM is a plunk GM this week, where you sit back and kind of deal damage at a distance. But if you build in heavily into the arc damage and the whole, then you might be okay. But that's really the point here, is that you have to play into the arc damage when you're already being restricted on your weapon types by champion mods, or maybe abilities or something like that. And this is just another way, again, to restrict your loadout. And I really hate that, because I'd love to be able to run like a stasis or a void weapon to do increased damage, to make the runs a little bit faster. For example, let's say you want to use Ariana's Vow, because you like using it for barrier champs. It would be detrimental to you because you're not feeding into Arc Hunger. Or, say you want to use Arbalest or Wish Ender or whatever. Now, they could change this to, just straight up ability damage. You need to be using your abilities or something like that. And that feeds into your abilities. And that makes sense because, maybe someone's getting too happy with a gun and they just want you to use your abilities and kind of do all of it at once. I don't know, anything but this, because it really nails you down to one element, which is very similar to what we had with Match Game. Now, if you don't know what Match Game was, it was essentially a modifier that made it so if you didn't have the corresponding element to the shield of the enemy type, then you would do no damage at all. Like, if you were facing solar shields and you weren't using solar weapons, yeah, you were basically screwed. And the only exception to this was Arbalest, because it is universally a shield breaker. It was not fun, and this isn't fun to me. I think counterfeit is okay, because once you figure it out and you know how to counter it. You know, you can shoot the ammo boxes, loot to shoot, you can also use on it, it'll vanish or whatever. You know, it's fine, you can counter it, it's not a big deal. Counterfeit, you can counter it, haha, funny. But with this, the only counter to it is to deviate from the hunger and to essentially put yourself at a natural disadvantage when you're already playing one of the game's hardest activities. So it's a no-brainer to just put an arc weapon on and of course feed into this. Now I could be making a big deal out of nothing here, and I will eat my words if that's the case. I've only done like one GM with this modifier on, but I just like the freedom of being able to run whatever I want to do a GM. It might be unorthodox, it might be a meta, whatever it is. I like having that little bit of freedom because we have exotics that have intrinsic champ mods like Bastion or Leviathan's Breath, but again, this totally makes you go in the opposite direction. It forces you to use other guns that you might not use, or guns that you simply don't use at all. Right? You dust them off because, oh, it's arc damage. So yeah, that's my gripe with this modifier. I hope, you know, maybe they can do something similar to this or pull it back a little bit, maybe make it 2 elements. That way you have a little bit more freedom, or have one of the elements match the surge, so you can play into the surges as well, because that's like a huge bonus that you're losing out on. And it seems intentional to have the hunger not matching the surges, but maybe it'll eventually match and whatever. But yeah, that's all I have to say. I wondered what the community sentiment was on this, so if you guys want to drop your thoughts below, please do in a respectful way, and I'll see you guys in the next one.